Today, I'm rendering tallow. So I have some leftover tallow here. This is what it is, liquid gold they call it. So I have a whole bunch of beef fat that I took off of a big strip loin that I got yesterday. So I'm gonna cut this up and show you how to make it in the Instapot. There's a bunch of other ways you can do it too, but I find the Instapot's the easiest and takes the least amount of time. So let's get set up and we'll get right into it. Okay, the goal here is to try to cut up the fat pieces into kind of tiny little squares, because I'm going to throw them in here, and the more surface area you can expose, the better. So I'm going to say, just based on sheer effort, that's about the size that I want to do, and then I can just go through and cut up as much as I can that'll fit in there without taking up too much of the space. So yeah, just got these little squares. I'll cut these in half, and yeah, probably halves. I don't want to waste too much time, but whatever time you have, that is what you can do to cut it up. The smaller the better, but this will be fine for me. And then I'm just throwing it in the pot. I'll fill this up probably about halfway with the whatever the fat chunk. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's got the halfway mark there. And then add a little bit of water. But yeah, so I'm gonna go into time-lapse mode and we'll cut up as much fat as I can. So I've got a lot of it cut up, so that's a little bit fuller than I want it, but it'll be fine. I didn't want to spend too much time cutting because it is exhausting, but I still have more than half of this, so I'm gonna have to do this a couple more times just to make sure we get through that all that fat before it goes bad. And then I have a couple cups of water here, and I'll just pour that in. And that should be just enough to make sure that it doesn't burn when it's starting out. And then if you plug it in, I typically run it for 2 hours on pressure cook, the pressure cook setting. Backwards. So you throw the lid on, do that, and then whatever your pressure cook setting is, pressure cook, I have it set at 90. I'm gonna bump it to 120. Just so that way it makes sure it really renders down all of the fat, so you don't have to do it twice, which you could do if you want to get a little bit more tallow out of it. But so then we'll just sit it there at 120, and we'll come back in a couple hours and go through the next steps. We are back just over 2 hours later. This is all done. I'm gonna turn it off. And then now we have our fat chunks and I guess there's 3 ingredients. You have the fat, kind of the pieces that didn't render down, and then you will have the actual fat or the tallow, and then there'll also be the gelatin that's in here. So we're just gonna kind of separate the 3 things. So first we're gonna pretty much pour this into the strainer so it's in the measuring cup, so that'll separate the solids from the liquids. And then we'll have to pour the tallow out from the measuring cup once it's cool into this plastic container, and then that'll separate kind of most of the tallow from the gelatin, and then we'll have to go through another process to make sure it's all out, and then we can store the gelatin separately. So you end up with 3 kind of things here. So I got the GoPro on my head here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, at least from one of the angles. And I'll take just the pot of fat, pour it down as much as I can. Nice and slow. You don't want to overfill the measuring cup. And I'm using glass because obviously the fat is hot and it'll burn through the plastic, and you don't want that. So I'm going to dump all that out. Little bit left here. And these cracklings, they call them, I guess cracklings once you have them baked, they still hold some fat. So you can see that if you squish it, it'll drip out. So I just try and push down on it a little bit, try to really extract as much tallow and rendered fat out of it as I can. You're not gonna get it all, but more the merrier. Okay, so I'm gonna put these just on top there like that. And then I have my tallow. I'll get a better view for you, but just this. So that's the tallow. You can see the tallow is on top, and then this is the gelatin. So this is approximately how much we're gonna get from the amount of fat that I cut and put in. So I'm gonna let this cool a little bit longer, so that way I can put it into the blue bowl, and then I'll separate out the gelatin and put that in a jar. So we'll see you in a few minutes. So it's been about 45 minutes now. It feels a bit warm, but I think it's cool off enough for me to transfer it in. I just want to show you what kind of looks like here. So this is the gelatin, this kind of floppy, kind of fat looking part, and then there's the excess water, and then the tallow is on top, and then these are just kind of little extra protein bits that get strained out or don't get strained out. So this is what the gelatin looks like. Obviously the tallow will be just that part, but those are kind of the three substances that you do get out of this. So I am going to slowly pour just the tallow out of this. So I just want to take the top, so it just drains that. I'll grab this camera just so you can see it from this angle. So I don't want to, the bottom stuff I don't want to have drip out. So we're just doing the top. Obviously you can go faster at the start, and then you can see that it's kind of getting a little bit of bottom stuff's coming up. So to get closer, this is much easier with two hands. But yeah, I'm just gonna pour just the tallow, just the top part, because obviously the fat, the oil will separate from the water, which is pretty much the gelatin and the water beneath it. So I try to get as close as I can. I'm gonna switch to one hand for this. Back to one hand. Well, and yeah, the better job you do here, the more pure the tallow will be. So if you have some gelatin and some of those crumbly protein bits, it just increases the chance that the tallow will get contaminated, or it just won't last as long, especially if you don't keep it in the fridge. I still like to keep it in the fridge, even though it's pretty shelf stable and it'll last quite a while. Just kind of checking. It's like I definitely have a little bit of layers. One of the reasons why we use a plastic, or at least a softer shelled bowl, is because you'll see after we're going to cover it and put it in the fridge for a handful of hours. I'll probably check it tomorrow morning, and then I can pop it out of the bowl and then scrape off all the excess gelatin and just throw that out, and then we have pretty much purely just tallow, because obviously this is not just tallow. So that's what this is going to look like. That's pretty much just tallow, and then the other stuff I'm just going to put in jars for now, and that's what this is. So you see that I'll just pour the rest of it in here. Hopefully it fits in one. Yep, perfect. So these two are the same, and then I'm going to put this in this tallow. This is closer to a tallow jar. I like the jars that you use your tallow for to be a bit wider, just so that way it's easier to get a spoon in, whereas here it's tough to get to the bottom. So this is a better than bouillon container. So these ones are really great for that. But yeah, now I'm going to cover this and then throw it in the fridge, and then we'll come back in, well, probably tomorrow morning when it's all done, and then I'll show you what to do next. I have to do 2 more sets of this, so I'll probably add to it, so this will be a whole huge chunk of tallow, hopefully. So yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Just kidding, forgot to mention what we do with the excess protein bits. So that's all the protein, or all the stuff that didn't render down, at least. Not just protein, there's some fat in there too, for sure. And then I put it in some sort of bakeable tray, and I make sure I close it up. I do that because it likes to pop, and it'll make a mess otherwise. And then I just pop it in the oven at 325 or 350 for however long it takes to make it crispy. you can definitely add some salt. So I'm going to do that first, and then I will start the oven. And then these become cracklings, they're called. And they're just like a nice tasty snack. Or you can add it to a scramble or something. I like putting them into, if I have like scramble with bacon, you just add a little bit of fat onto that. And yeah, if you're ever lacking fat on a carnivore diet, this is something that you can definitely add to it to increase your fat intake. So I'm just going to throw these in the oven, get it heated up, and throw it in the oven, and I'll show you what they look like at the end as well. So I'm not going to see you tomorrow. I will see you when this is done, and then we'll finish out the tallow tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to call it here. I don't know how crispy it is, but you want them to be crispy. So we'll see. And then I have that extra, you can see the extra tallow. I'm just going to pour that directly into there in a second here. Open it up. See what we have. Yeah, it's definitely crispy. That's probably pretty good. I'm gonna put this in a container. You can either eat it as is, or I throw it in a scramble. That works too if you want to add some extra fat, but that looks pretty good there. So I will put that in a container, but for now, I will drain that into this container here. Oops. So this is pretty much pure tallow. There won't be any gelatin in this because it's already been broken down. This is just like a second phase of rendering. I accidentally dropped a few crumbles in there, but a few cracklings, but that'll diffuse to the bottom, so it won't be a big deal, but that'll be that there. See you tomorrow. I'll show you how to separate it. Okay, it is the next morning. I have pulled the tallow out of the fridge now. It is fully solidified, as you can see. Could be a bit tighter, but that's okay. Excuse me, this is the gelatin. So I have a layer of tallow. That's the tallow that I missed. I'm just gonna keep it there. I'm gonna put this in a stew, and that'll be, just add some kind of depth and flavor to it. And then normally I like to put it in these wide, smaller containers, but because I have so much, I'm gonna put it into this beets container. And finally, these are the cracklings. So these are just the fat chunks that are seasoned. So they're fully baked and crunchy, and they're a nice snack. Or again, you can add them into scrambles or something else. So what we do here, and why we put them in soft bowls, is so that way we can pop them out and then flip them out. And now we want to scrape off this. This is all the gelatin and extra, crumbs. So I'm just going to scrape it as much as I can back into the bowl. And because this is the stuff that has a bit of water and that will go bad eventually, so it's just your tallow won't be as pure. So I'm just going to try and go through and take off as much as I can. If you lose a bit of tallow, lose a bit of tallow. Again, this is going to be put into these containers and be used elsewhere, so nothing's going to waste. So that's that. And then I'm going to put it over here in a medium saucepan, turn it on a fairly low temperature. That's just going to heat it up again, so that way we can pour it into those bowls. So this one's a bit bigger, but process is the same. So typically tallow is made from kidney fat, so that'll be much thicker and more solid at room temperature, whereas this just came from a strip loin, so that's why the consistency is a little bit different and a little softer. And then we'll just stir this gently and let it all melt to a liquid before we transfer it to the glass jars. No, kitten. Not for kittens. Okay, we're just finishing up here. I just turned off the burner. It is pretty nice. There's no more chunks. It's fully liquid, so it's ready to be transferred. I'm looking at what it says in the line here, and I have over 1 liter, so I'm gonna need to use both of these containers, which is pretty sweet. Gonna have lots. And then it's just a simple slow, easy, steady pour. That pours really nice. That's why they call it liquid gold. So you can see the nice yellow color. I fill that up to there. That's that. Quite pretty. I can see that there is still a few little greeblies in the bottom of this one. Oh, that's full. So you could repeat the process, let it cool off, and then put it into the plastic bowls again and repeat this process just to make sure you get that more purified render. But I don't care that much. It'll get used relatively quickly. Uh-oh. Still have some. I need to put it into this one. Try not to make a mess. But yeah, you can repeat this process as many times as you want to purify, but at some point you get diminishing returns for your efforts. So yeah, there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a little bit. See you in the next one.